are talking with Carol Dine. She has written a remarkable book called Places in the Bone, a memoir published by Rutgers University Press. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you very much,
I
Connie.
mean, it is a book that is almost in the beautiful language you use, poetry, the way it is written, it is fiction, and yet it is your life.
Yes.
And let's start by saying important in it is a father who could have been a pillar of the community.
And was.
And who would then physically beat you.
Mm-hmm. And emotionally scar me. Yes, that was the difficulty because he had a terrific reputation. And he was an orthopedic surgeon and his patients adored him. I used to go to the hospital and the nurses said, "Oh, you look just like your father. Isn't that wonderful?"
Lucky. Yeah.
And I, yeah. And I had to, but at that point, I thought he was doing it for a reason, that I was bad. Yeah. And there wasn't, as it now, talk about it or support for abuse. And so I kept the secret, but my secret was not that he was just hitting me, that I deserved it, that I was a black sheep, a bad daughter.
Was this a form of sexual acting out,
No.
do you feel?
No, it was not molestation, I want to make that clear. It was physical abuse, and not all the time. I didn't know when he was going to do it. It was intermittent, which is very scary. And verbal abuse, terrible. I was ugly, I was a whore, I was stupid.
And your mother stayed quiet because from the day she had met him with laryngitis, she had been subdued and in his shadow,
Yes, I believe so. And she had a career as a teacher, and I didn't respect her because he would interrupt her phone calls with parents and say, I want dinner. It's like, I can't believe it. It sounds like a bad play, but it was my life.
Yeah, and not only a bad play, but when you are, how old were you when you had breast cancer?
I've had it 3 times. I started when I was 36, I think was the first time.
Yeah, and you go to him, and he sends you to somebody, and
a friend.
A friend. Well, that's within the medical.
Correct.
Would you read on page 41 what you wrote about sitting there and in the waiting room?
Surely.
Yeah.
Be happy to. In the waiting room, the doctor tells a young man wearing jeans and 1 gold earring, "You have non-aggressive cells." I imagine them as moss idling on a tree. Beside me, a woman, a paisley scarf wrapped around her head. I remember my hair falling in tracks across the pillow. The technician calls my name. I take my place behind a small table. Empty vials wait in a metal basket. I make a fist. She ties a tourniquet around my arm. There's a burning. This is the counting chamber. Driving home, there's a storm on my windshield. Leaves washed loose and raindrops like cells spun down, magnified. That night I dream I'm on a boat with the young man and the bald woman. We're about to go down. I pray to God, the whale, spit us out whole.
I mean, it's the import of each word and how it can affect the listener or the reader. Thank you.
Thank you.
You worked with Anne Sexton, too.
Yes, I don't mean to sound melodramatic, but I started writing when I was 30 after my divorce and separation from my son, and I started writing poems feverishly for 48 hours, and I knew she lived in the area. I was in Boston, she lived in Weston, and I mailed her poems. I didn't even expect, I just mailed them to put them in the universe, and the phone rang one day, and she said, "Hello, this is Anne Sexton." I can't imitate the voice. And I thought it was my girlfriend. Nancy, get off it. I'm sensitive. And it really was. And she said she loved my poems and she wanted to work with me. I didn't know she taught. She taught at BU at the time, Boston University, and privately in her home. and invited me. I worked with her for 3 months the summer before she died.
Your letters evidently must be marvelous, because later Stanley Kunitz
Kunitz, correct, who
Kunitz.
just died at
Yeah.
100 years old. Yeah.
turns out to be a relative.
Yeah.
You write to him and he says, come visit me.
Right, right.
And the story he tells you about his childhood is equally horrendous.
Yes, yes. His mother was 9 months pregnant with him. He lived in Worcester. And his father took carbolic acid. I guess he had a business downturn, I don't know, in those times.
Yeah.
And he killed himself. And so Stanley was fatherless until my great-grandfather, Mark Dine, married Stanley's mother. So he was Stanley's stepfather for about 8 years. And we had a wonderful relationship. So that was interesting. Stanley, who cherished life and, you know, came from awful circumstances, and one mentor in Anne, who chose to kill herself. So I had to choose. There's really not a choice.